It was a small town where life was not easy for many families. Among those families lived a 12-year-old girl named Aisha. She was very young, but her life had already shown her many struggles. Her father had passed away years ago, and since then her mother worked day and night to keep their small house and to put food on the table. They did not have much money, and every day was a challenge. Aisha did not complain. She accepted life as it was. But inside her heart she carried a dream that one day her mother would no longer cry at night worrying about how they would survive. Every morning before school, Aisha helped her mother with chores. She fetched water from the nearby hand pump, swept the floor of their little home, and sometimes went to the market to sell flowers. She had learned to make small garlands of flowers, which she sold to people passing by. The coins she earned were not much, but to her and her mother they were precious. Each coin meant they could buy some bread or rice. Some days she also polished shoes for office workers, smiling shyly as she worked. People noticed her hard work, but very few really cared about her struggles. Despite all this, Aisha carried a bright spirit. She was known in her neighborhood for her kindness. If an elderly neighbor needed help carrying groceries, she would run to assist. If a younger child fell while playing, she would comfort them and clean their scraped knee. She had little, but she gave a lot of love and care to others. Her eyes always had a spark of innocence, and her heart was full of courage. Life around her was very different. Just 2 streets away, big cars passed by every evening. Businessmen and rich families lived in tall houses with shining lights and strong gates. Sometimes Aisha walked near those houses, not to envy them, but to wonder what kind of life people lived behind those gates. She imagined large dining tables full of food, soft beds with warm blankets, and children playing with toys she had never owned. She would sigh and go back home to her mother, who often waited with a simple meal of bread and lentils. At night, when Aisha lay on her old mat, she listened to her mother whispering prayers. She knew her mother worried about rent, about school fees, about the rising cost of food. Aisha wished she could take away all that pain. She would close her eyes and imagine herself grown up, working in a big office, wearing neat clothes, and giving her mother all the comfort she deserved. That dream kept her strong, even when life was harsh. One day, as Aisha walked home from school, she saw her classmates buying snacks from a street vendor. She wanted some too, but she knew she could not spend money on such things. She smiled and walked past, clutching her school bag tighter. Her uniform was faded and her shoes were worn out, but she carried herself with pride. She told herself that she had something more valuable than snacks or toys. She had hope. Her teachers noticed she was a bright student. She loved reading stories and writing in her notebook. She wrote about her dreams, about the sky, about kindness. Even though she lacked many things, her imagination was rich. Sometimes the teacher gave her extra books to read, and Aisha treated those books as treasures. She believed education was the key that could one day unlock a better future. On weekends, Aisha worked more. She helped an old shopkeeper by arranging his goods and sweeping the shop floor. In return, he gave her a few coins and sometimes an apple or piece of bread. She never kept these treats for herself. She always saved them for her mother. Her mother often cried softly when she saw this sacrifice. But Aisha would hug her and say, "Do not worry, Mama. One day everything will be fine." The people in her neighborhood admired her, but they also pitied her. They thought she was too young to carry so much responsibility. But Aisha never thought of herself as weak. She believed that even a small person could make a big difference if their heart was strong. That belief made her stand out, even though she lived among shadows of poverty. Life continued like this until one evening that would change everything. It was a cloudy day and the streets were wet from rain. Aisha had been out selling her flowers, her little basket almost empty. The sky grew dark as she walked back, carefully avoiding puddles. Cars rushed by, splashing water, their bright headlights cutting through the mist. She held her old umbrella, which had a broken handle but still kept her somewhat dry. As she crossed the busy road, she noticed something unusual. A shiny black car was parked by the side. Near it, a man in a fine suit was leaning against the door, struggling to breathe. People walked past, some glancing, some ignoring, each lost in their own world. Aisha's heart raced. She had never seen such a man before, clearly wealthy with a gold watch and polished shoes. But in that moment he looked helpless. Without thinking, Aisha rushed to him. Her umbrella tilted awkwardly, but she held it above his head to shield him from the rain. She bent down, speaking softly. "Sir, are you okay? Please stay awake." The man tried to speak, but his voice was weak. His face was pale and he seemed close to collapsing. Aisha's small hands trembled, but she did not run away. She looked around, shouting for help, but no one came. Everyone was too busy, too afraid, or too uncaring. She quickly remembered a small pharmacy nearby. She ran as fast as she could, her wet shoes slipping, and burst inside. Breathless, she told the pharmacist, "Please, there's a man outside. He needs help." She grabbed a bottle of water and hurried back. The man was now sitting on the wet ground, leaning against the car. Aisha knelt beside him, offering water. "Please drink a little," she said gently. He opened his eyes slightly, surprised by the sight of a poor girl helping him. She stayed there, refusing to leave until proper help arrived. Finally, someone called an ambulance. When the flashing lights came, Aisha felt relief. Paramedics rushed to the man, lifting him carefully and putting him on a stretcher. As they did, one of them asked, "Who stayed with him?" Aisha raised her hand shyly. They looked at her with respect, realizing this young girl had been his only support. In that moment, Aisha did not think about who he was or how rich he looked. To her, he was just a human being in need. She held his hand until the paramedics took over, whispering softly, "You will be fine, sir." She had no idea that this man was one of the most powerful businessmen in the city. Her simple act of courage that evening was about to change her life forever. The rain was still falling when the ambulance sped away, carrying the unconscious man. Aisha stood at the roadside, her old umbrella dripping with water, her clothes soaked but her heart heavy with worry. She did not know if the man would live, but she prayed quietly that he would recover. The sound of sirens faded, and the crowd that had gathered quickly dispersed, returning to their busy lives. To them, it was just another incident in the city. But for Aisha, it felt like something important had happened. She did not know what, but she felt it deep inside. As she walked home through the wet streets, she thought about his pale face and the way he tried to breathe. She thought about how alone he looked, even though his car was expensive and he wore a gold watch. For the first time, she realized that even the richest people could be helpless. She remembered how no one stopped to help him except her, a poor 12-year-old girl. This thought made her proud but also confused. Why had adults ignored him? Why had no one cared? At home, her mother noticed her wet clothes and scolded her gently. "Aisha, you will fall sick like this," she said, rushing to bring a towel. Aisha explained what had happened on the roadside. Her mother listened quietly, her eyes full of concern but also pride. She hugged Aisha tightly and whispered, "My child, you did something very brave today. Remember, kindness is the biggest wealth." Aisha smiled faintly, feeling warm despite her soaked clothes. The next morning, news spread quickly in the city. The man Aisha had helped was not an ordinary person. His name was Mr. Rahman, a millionaire businessman known for owning several companies, hotels, and properties. Newspapers carried headlines, "Business tycoon collapses in rain, saved by young girl." Many people were shocked. His family, his employees, and his security staff were embarrassed that a poor child had been the one to save him, while they were nowhere to be seen. When Aisha went to school that day, some of her classmates whispered about her. "That's the girl in the news," one said. Others looked at her with amazement. Aisha felt shy and kept her head low. She did not do it for fame. She only wanted the man to live. But still, she could not stop thinking about him. She wondered if he was awake, if he was safe now. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Mr. Rahman slowly opened his eyes. The doctors told him he had fainted due to exhaustion and stress. He had been working non-stop, ignoring his health. If not for the girl who kept him awake and called for help, things could have been worse. He listened carefully and asked, "Where is the girl who helped me?" His assistants shifted uncomfortably, ashamed they had not been there. One of them replied, "Sir, she is just a poor child. We don't know much about her." Mr. Rahman frowned. "No," he said firmly, "find her. I want to see her. She gave me more than help, she gave me life." His words carried weight, and his staff knew they had no choice. They started searching the neighborhood where she was last seen. Back in her small house, Aisha was sitting with her mother, mending her torn school bag. A loud knock on the door startled them. When her mother opened it, two well-dressed men stood outside. "We are looking for Aisha," one said politely. Her mother grew nervous, wondering if her daughter had done something wrong. But the men quickly explained, "Mr. Rahman, the man she helped yesterday, wishes to meet her." Aisha's heart raced. She had never been asked to meet such an important person. She looked at her mother, unsure. Her mother placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Go, my child. You did a good thing. Now meet the man you saved." The next day, Aisha found herself standing inside a grand hospital building.
She had never been to such a place before.
The walls were white and clean. The air smelled of medicine, and people in uniforms moved briskly through the halls. She clutched her old umbrella, feeling small among the tall, polished surroundings. A nurse guided her into a private room where Mr. Rahman lay on a bed. He looked weaker than the day she saw him, but his eyes were brighter now. When he saw Aisha step in, he smiled gently. "So you are the angel who saved me," he said softly. Aisha lowered her head, blushing. "I only did what anyone should do," she replied in a timid voice. Mr. Rahman shook his head. "No, my child. Many people walked past me. No one cared, but you stayed." His words touched everyone in the room. His assistants, his doctors, even the nurse stood silently, realizing the truth in what he said. He asked her to sit beside him. She nervously pulled a chair closer, still holding her umbrella. He noticed her worn-out shoes and faded dress. For a moment, his eyes filled with sadness. He whispered to her, "You remind me of someone I once knew." His voice trembled, but he quickly hid his emotions. As they talked, Aisha told him about her life, how she sold flowers, how she helped her mother, how she studied hard despite difficulties. Mr. Rahman listened with great attention, something he rarely gave even to his business partners. He was touched by her honesty, her courage, and her pure heart. Before she left, he held her hand and said, "Do not ever think you are small. You have a heart bigger than many rich men I know. Because of you, I am alive today." Aisha's eyes welled up with tears. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. When she returned home that evening, she told her mother about the meeting. Her mother listened with teary eyes. She felt proud of her daughter, but also worried. They were simple people. Meeting someone as powerful as Mr. Rahman felt like stepping into a world far away from their own. Yet she knew something important had started. That night, Aisha lay awake on her mat, staring at the roof. She kept hearing his words in her mind. "Do not ever think you are small." For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not as a poor child, but as someone who mattered. She didn't know what the future held, but she felt that her life had just taken a turn she could never have imagined. After that evening, life for Aisha began to change in ways she could never have imagined. The news about her bravery spread beyond her small neighborhood. People in her school whispered about her, and some students who had ignored her before now looked at her with awe. She didn't care about fame or attention, but she felt a quiet sense of pride. For the first time, she understood that even a small act of kindness could touch someone's life in a big way. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Mr. Rahman's condition slowly improved. The doctors were amazed at his recovery, and they often mentioned that it was the timely care and insistence of a brave child that had made the difference. His assistants still shook their heads, feeling guilty that they had been too busy to notice his struggle. Mr. Rahman, however, focused not on blame, but on gratitude. Every moment he could spare, he asked about the girl who had saved him. "She has a heart beyond her age," he would say. "I must meet her properly and thank her." One afternoon, he asked his personal assistant to bring Aisha to his room again. This time, she was not shy about entering the hospital. She wore her school uniform, a little damp from rain outside, and carried her small school bag. As she stepped inside, she noticed the grandeur of the hospital room. The walls were decorated with paintings, and the floor shone as if polished every day. She felt nervous, but she reminded herself that she had a job, to see that the man she had helped was okay. When Mr. Rahman saw her, he smiled warmly. "Welcome back, my brave friend," he said. Aisha lowered her head, feeling shy but also proud. "I just wanted to make sure you were fine," she whispered. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You did more than just that. You gave me life when I was alone and helpless. You stayed with me when no one else did." His eyes reflected a depth of emotion that Aisha had never seen before. She realized that this man, despite all his wealth and power, had felt alone and frightened just like anyone else. He asked her to sit beside him. His hand reached out, holding hers gently. "Tell me about yourself, Aisha. What do you do? What are your dreams?" Aisha spoke carefully, describing her school, her home, her mother's hard work, and her daily struggles. She told him how she sold flowers, helped neighbors, and worked small jobs to help her mother. She didn't speak about wanting money or gifts. Her words carried honesty and innocence. Mr. Rahman listened intently, absorbing every detail. Her stories reminded him of his own childhood, one filled with comfort and opportunity, but also of the loneliness he felt in his adult life. He realized how far removed he had become from the simple joys of kindness, from moments where helping others was not tied to wealth or fame. Aisha's bravery and compassion had touched a part of his heart he thought was long gone. He leaned closer and whispered to her, "You remind me of my own daughter who passed away many years ago. She was your age when I lost her. Seeing you today, I feel her presence again." Aisha froze. She did not know what to say. She had never imagined that her simple act of helping a man could bring such emotions to someone so powerful. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she quickly blinked them away. She felt a mixture of sadness and a strange warmth, understanding that the man before her was not just grateful, but also deeply moved. Over the next few days, Mr. Rahman asked his staff to ensure Aisha and her mother were safe and comfortable. He sent them small gifts, but he emphasized that money was not the most important thing. What mattered to him was her courage, her heart, and the reminder that the world still had goodness left in it. Aisha's mother was overwhelmed and grateful. She never imagined that a small act of kindness could lead to such recognition, let alone from a millionaire. One day, as Aisha visited Mr. Rahman again, he took her aside quietly. His voice was soft and his eyes glistened with tears. "Aisha, I want you to know something important. You have a heart that many adults don't have. You stayed when I was in danger. You did not think about money or fame. You only thought about helping someone in need. That is more valuable than any wealth I own." Aisha's hands trembled slightly as she listened. She had never received such sincere words in her life. It made her heart swell with emotions she could not fully explain. The man continued, "I have lived many years, but your courage reminds me of the lessons I forgot. Life is not only about power, money, or status. It is about kindness, courage, and caring for others. You, my dear, have reminded me of that." Aisha felt a mixture of pride and humility. She realized that her simple actions could change not just one life, but even the heart of someone who had everything. Word about Aisha's bravery also reached Mr. Rahman's social circles. Some of his friends and business partners came to meet her, curious about the child who had saved the millionaire. They were amazed at how humble and polite she was, despite being suddenly noticed by people with so much influence. Aisha did not let their attention change her. She remained the same caring, kind-hearted girl she had always been. Her humility impressed everyone more than her courage. As the days passed, Aisha and Mr. Rahman grew closer in a unique way. He shared stories of his childhood, his family, and his business, but always made sure she felt comfortable and respected. He encouraged her to continue her education and praised her dedication to helping her mother and neighbors. Aisha, in turn, listened carefully, learning lessons about life, resilience, and responsibility. She realized that despite the differences in their worlds, they both shared a belief in the importance of kindness and courage. One afternoon, as Aisha was leaving the hospital, Mr. Rahman whispered something that she would never forget. "Aisha, you have a gift. Not many people understand the value of life and compassion like you do. Never lose that gift. The world needs more people like you." Aisha felt tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy and hope. She knew that her small acts of bravery had not only saved a life, but had also created a bond that would change her life forever. That evening, as she returned home, she told her mother everything. Her mother held her close and whispered, "My child, your courage is shining brighter than any wealth in the world. Remember, it is your heart that will take you far." Aisha nodded, feeling a new sense of purpose. She understood that even though she was young and poor, she had the power to make a difference. The encounter with Mr. Rahman began to teach Aisha lessons that could not be found in books. She learned that bravery is not measured by size or wealth, but by actions. She learned that kindness can touch hearts deeply, even those hardened by life or wealth. Most importantly, she learned that a single act of courage could change someone's life forever. And in her heart, she knew that her life was no longer the same. She had glimpsed a world beyond her struggles, a world where goodness mattered more than money, and where even a 12-year-old girl could make a powerful difference. That realization stayed with her, quietly guiding her thoughts and actions every day. Days passed after Aisha's visits to the hospital, and her life continued much as before, yet everything had subtly changed. She walked to school with a lighter step, her heart filled with hope, knowing that someone she had helped now cared deeply for her. Her classmates still whispered, pointing to her in admiration, but she ignored the attention. She focused on her studies, her chores, and helping her mother. She had learned that her actions could make a difference, and that knowledge gave her courage. Meanwhile, Mr. Rahman's recovery progressed steadily. He spent his days reflecting on the events that had brought him back from the brink. The image of a 12-year-old girl, small yet brave, refusing to leave his side, had touched him in ways he could not express. He had always lived a life surrounded by wealth, servants, and business partners, yet he realized that no amount of money could buy the genuine kindness that Aisha had shown. He thought often about her, not just as a girl who saved him, but as a reminder of the goodness that still existed in the world. One afternoon, he decided that he could no longer wait. He requested that Aisha be brought to the hospital again, and when she arrived, he greeted her with a warm, genuine smile. She could see a new softness in his eyes, a tenderness that went beyond gratitude. He asked her to sit beside him and quietly said, "Aisha, you have a heart I have long forgotten to see. You have reminded me what it means to care, to be human." Aisha listened intently, feeling emotions she could not yet put into words. She had helped him, but she did not expect this kind of response. As the minutes passed, Mr. Rahman leaned closer and whispered something into her ear. Aisha's eyes widened and a tear rolled down her cheek. She had never heard anything so heartfelt. He spoke not of money or gifts, but of personal loss and emotion. He told her about his daughter, a child of her own age who had passed away many years ago. He explained how he had buried himself in work, ignoring the loneliness and grief that had grown in his heart. Seeing Aisha reminded him of the daughter he had lost, and the act of bravery she had shown brought back feelings he thought he would never experience again. Aisha's heart ached as she listened, not because of fear or sadness, but because she could feel the depth of his emotions. She realized that her simple act of helping a stranger had reached far beyond what she had imagined. She had not just saved a life. She had touched a heart that had been heavy for many years. The whisper made her cry quietly, moved by the sincerity and vulnerability of a man who had everything but had longed for the simple kindness she had offered. Over the next few days, Mr. Rahman's focus shifted. He asked his staff to ensure Aisha's family was taken care of, but he emphasized that this was only because of her heart, not as a repayment for helping him. He wanted to show that true gratitude was not about transactions, but about acknowledging the courage and goodness in others. His assistants, seeing his change, were amazed. They had never witnessed such humility in him before. Aisha began visiting him regularly. Each time he would share stories of his childhood, his late daughter, and the lessons he had learned too late. He spoke of wealth and power, but always with the reminder that none of it mattered without compassion. Aisha listened carefully, absorbing the lessons, learning not only about courage but also about empathy, loss, and the value of kindness. She felt privileged to be trusted with his thoughts, and she grew more confident in herself and her purpose. The whisper of personal truth that had made her cry remained in her mind. She replayed it often, letting it guide her actions. When she helped her neighbors or worked small jobs for her mother, she did so with more confidence, knowing that her bravery and heart were seen and appreciated. People began to notice subtle changes in her demeanor. She walked taller, spoke with more clarity, and carried a quiet pride that drew admiration. One day, Mr. Rahman invited her mother to the hospital. He wanted to meet the woman who had raised such a remarkable child. When Aisha's mother arrived, she was nervous and hesitant, unsure of how to behave in such a grand environment. But Mr. Rahman welcomed her warmly, thanking her for raising a daughter with such strength and compassion. He explained that it was not wealth that mattered to him now, but the human connection that Aisha had rekindled. The mother and daughter left the hospital that day with a sense of hope they had never known. Mr. Rahman's words continued to echo in Aisha's mind. She realized that courage and kindness were the true measures of a person's worth, far beyond money, fame, or status. The whisper he had shared with her had changed the way she viewed the world, giving her a sense of responsibility to continue helping others, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Back in her neighborhood, Aisha's story inspired others. Children who had been timid began to help their neighbors, and adults who had turned a blind eye started to notice the value of small acts of kindness. Aisha did not seek attention, but her actions had created a ripple of change. She became a symbol of hope, demonstrating that even a young, poor girl could influence hearts and minds in ways no one expected. As the days turned into weeks, Aisha's bond with Mr. Rahman grew stronger. He continued to mentor her, sharing life lessons in patience, perseverance, and empathy. He encouraged her to dream big while remaining grounded in her values. She listened, absorbing everything, understanding that true strength came from the heart, not from possessions or social standing. One quiet evening, Mr. Rahman called Aisha to his room. He held her hands and said softly, "You have reminded me that life is fragile, and that love and courage can heal even the deepest wounds. I want you to always remember that no act of kindness is too small." Aisha's eyes filled with tears again, but these were tears of gratitude and understanding. She realized that the bond between them was not just about one life being saved. It was about hearts connecting, lessons being shared, and lives being transformed. That night, as she lay on her bed, Aisha reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the whisper that had made her cry, the kindness that had been returned to her family, and the lessons she had learned. She understood that her life had been forever changed, not just because of the millionaire she had saved, but because she had discovered the profound impact of courage, empathy, and human connection. Aisha knew that her journey was just beginning. She would continue to help others to be brave and to live with a heart full of compassion. She realized that the whisper had given her more than words. It had given her a vision of the kind of person she wanted to become, a person whose actions could touch lives in ways that money and power never could. A few weeks later, Mr. Rahman was strong enough to leave the hospital. His recovery had been steady, and the doctors were satisfied with his health. But while his body had healed, something deeper had also changed inside him. The experience of nearly losing his life had opened his eyes, and meeting Aisha had touched his heart in a way no business achievement ever had. He no longer looked at the world through the lens of money and power alone. Instead, he thought about the value of kindness, the strength of courage, and the importance of compassion. On the morning of his discharge, Mr. Rahman asked his driver to take him not to his mansion, but to Aisha's small neighborhood. His assistants were surprised. Some even questioned his decision, but he silenced them with a single sentence. "The girl who saved me lives there. It is her home that I wish to visit first." Aisha and her mother were sitting in their small living room when they heard the sound of a car stopping outside. They looked out the window and saw a shiny black car, the same one Aisha had noticed on that rainy evening. This time, however, the car door opened, and Mr. Rahman himself stepped out, dressed neatly but without the arrogance of a man flaunting his wealth. He walked with steady steps, supported slightly by his assistant, and knocked gently on their door. When Aisha's mother opened it, she was stunned. She quickly moved aside, inviting him in with respect. Their small house looked even smaller compared to the grandeur of his world, but Mr. Rahman did not seem to notice. He sat on their old wooden chair, smiled warmly, and said, "This is the place I wanted to be. This is where the heart that saved me lives." Aisha blushed, looking down shyly. She had never imagined that someone like him would visit her humble home. Her mother offered him tea, embarrassed that she could not serve him something grand. But he accepted it with gratitude, saying, "This is better than the finest drinks in my hotels, because it comes from your heart." As they sat together, Mr. Rahman explained his plans. He told Aisha and her mother that he wanted to sponsor Aisha's education, ensuring she would have the opportunity to study in the best schools and later at the university. He promised her mother that they would never have to worry about rent, food, or basic needs again. But he emphasized one thing: "I am not giving you this as payment for saving my life. No amount of money can repay that. I am doing this because Aisha has shown me the true meaning of humanity, and I want her to have every chance to shine." Aisha's mother could not hold back her tears. She clasped her hands together, thanking him repeatedly, but Mr. Rahman shook his head. "Thank your daughter," he said softly. "She is the one who gave me a second chance to live not just in body but in spirit." Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People gathered outside their small home, astonished to see the millionaire sitting humbly inside, sipping tea from a simple cup and speaking with respect to a poor widow and her child. Many whispered in disbelief, while others felt proud that someone from their area had shown such bravery and touched such an important man's heart. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Rahman kept his promise. He arranged for Aisha to be enrolled in a prestigious school, providing her with books, a uniform, and everything she needed. At first, Aisha felt nervous stepping into a world so different from her own. The children there came from wealthy families, arriving in cars and wearing polished shoes. But she remembered Mr. Rahman's words, "Do not ever think you are small." She carried those words with her like a shield, walking with quiet dignity. Her new teachers quickly noticed her intelligence and determination. She worked hard, not wasting the opportunity she had been given. She still helped her mother at home, still visited her old neighbors, and still carried her kindness everywhere she went. She never let her new surroundings make her arrogant or proud. Instead, she remained humble, which made her even more admired by those around her. Meanwhile, Mr. Rahman did something even more extraordinary. He created a scholarship fund in Aisha's name, dedicated to helping other children from poor backgrounds. "If one girl can change my life," he explained at the opening ceremony, "then imagine what many children can do for the world if we give them the chance." His words touched many hearts, and people applauded not just his generosity, but the lesson he had learned from a 12-year-old girl. At the ceremony, Aisha stood nervously beside him. She was dressed neatly in her new school uniform, her hair tied back simply, but her eyes shone with courage. When it was her turn to speak, she said softly, "I did not save Mr. Rahman because he was rich. I saved him because he was a human being in need. My mother taught me that kindness is the biggest wealth. I will always remember that." Her words moved the audience to tears. Many wealthy people who attended that day promised themselves to live with more compassion. Later, when the crowd dispersed, Mr. Rahman bent down to Aisha and whispered the same words he had whispered before. But this time he said them for her mother and others to hear as well. "You saved me, not just my life, but my heart." Aisha's eyes filled with tears once again, but this time they were tears of joy, pride, and hope. Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering prayers of thanks. From that day forward, Aisha's life was forever changed. She studied hard, inspired not only by the opportunities she had received, but by the knowledge that her actions had sparked a chain of kindness. Her neighborhood looked at her not just as a poor child, but as a symbol of hope. Children admired her courage, and adults respected her wisdom beyond her years. Mr. Rahman often visited, not as a businessman, but as a friend. He found comfort in Aisha's presence, and in return, she treated him with respect and kindness, never forgetting the whisper that had changed her life. Together they built a bond that went beyond wealth and status. It was built on gratitude, compassion, and humanity. And so the story of a poor 12-year-old girl who saved a millionaire did not end with an ambulance or a hospital room. It grew into something far greater, a reminder that even the smallest hands can lift the heaviest hearts, and that sometimes the richest gift we can give is kindness. Aisha would carry that lesson for the rest of her life, proving that no act of goodness is ever wasted, and that even a whisper of truth can echo forever.